Good evening. It's 6:30 on the 22nd day of August, and that means it's time for this week's Hamilton Report. I really missed being with you last week. I was a bit under the weather, but I'm back in full force this week. And I promise you that our program this evening will make up for the time we were away from each last week. With that, one of the challenges with doing a live broadcast every week is that we never know exactly what's going to happen or how. I'm showing that my connection strength on one hand is very strong, but I'm also going to signal that it's not strong on the other. So my hope is that you can hear us and see us this evening because there's a lot happening. As you know, tomorrow is the runoff election. Every Democrat in every precinct throughout the state of Oklahoma has an opportunity to vote for tomorrow. Now, depending on where you are, you may have several things. You may have other runoffs. But one of the things that we are incredibly focused on tomorrow is determining who it will be that the Democrats will mount a fierce campaign against, and James Lankford must go. We have two extraordinary candidates in Madison Horn and Jason Bollinger, who will be both on your ballot tomorrow. I hope that you've had a chance to hear them both, to understand what they stand for and how they really want to help all Oklahomans. This is a critical time for our state and for our nation. And to think that we have two opportunities this year to send senators to Congress, that doesn't happen but maybe once in a lifetime. And this is our opportunity to both fill Inhofe's seat with the incredible Kendra Horn, and also to take on Lankford with either Madison Horn or Jason Bollinger. That's your choice. But I beg you to make that choice tomorrow. Polls are open from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening. If you got an absentee ballot and you did not send it in, don't worry. Go to your precinct, vote tomorrow. You'll just have to sign a statement saying that you did not turn in your absentee ballot, and they'll file it as and it's you'll sign twice, and that's one of the ways that you'll just sign that it was not turned in. Your absentee ballot was not turned in, so it'll be a provisional ballot, but it will count. And so please, tomorrow is the day, and I beg you to vote. I also want to mention in sad news today, we mourn the passing of Sally Frazier, who was an incredible stalwart in this party. She encouraged people to vote. She encouraged people to become involved in the Democratic Party. And so our thoughts are with her husband, Jim Frazier, and their family tonight. Well, I said that we've got a lot going on this evening. And before I introduce our special guest, Adam Martin, I want to show you something that appeared today on the vile website of a vile man named Ryan Walters. You all have heard him. He's the one that does the car videos. But he posted this on his website. He said that April Grace is endorsed by the Oklahoma Democratic Party. Now, let me assure you, we're going to get to the bottom of this right now. I'd like for you to welcome to the Hamilton Report the chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party, Alicia Andrews. Alicia, thanks for jumping in this evening.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Democrats. This happened as my life was going on, and so I was not aware of it because I don't follow Ryan Walters. But someone made me aware of what was going on, and so I can't let hours go without addressing it. The Oklahoma Democratic Party endorses Gina Nelson for the Superintendent of Public Education. That's our candidate. We are 100% behind. She is a 2020 Teacher of the Year. She is still in the classroom. She is who we endorse, and we'll take more time to talk about how great Gina is. I just needed to come on one more time and make sure that everybody understands that what Ryan Walters did is actually a violation of campaigning. You're allowed to exaggerate, you're allowed to puffer, but you are not allowed to lie. And what he did was lie. The Oklahoma Democratic Party, if you'll see it, it says paid for by Ryan Walters campaign or some nonsense. The Oklahoma Democratic Party does not endorse Republicans. First and foremost, we don't endorse Republicans, particularly when we have a very well qualified candidate in that race. So to imply, no, he didn't imply. He just flat out lied. And so I wanted to be clear. I wanted for Democrats to hear it out of my mouth that that is not true, that we endorse Gina Nelson. We do not endorse April Grace in that race. But, those are the actions. Lying are the actions of a desperate man. And I guess he's showing us that he is a desperate man. So, Scott, I apologize for taking up your time, but I wanted to come on and say that as quickly as I could, so it didn't linger and make people wonder if there was some truth to the nonsense that he posted.
And I appreciate. I know that you've had back-to-back meetings this evening, and I can tell that you're not even home right now. So
I'm still at a meeting.
Okay. Well, thanks for stopping in, Alicia, and for setting the record straight.
Thank you.
This is more of what we've come to expect from Stitt and his crew, his appointed buddies. They lie, and they are not good for Oklahoma. And that's why we need positive change in our state. Speaking of positive change, it's my privilege now to welcome to the Hamilton Report our candidate to run for Congressional District Number 1, Adam Martin. Adam, good evening and welcome to the Hamilton Report, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I want to start at the beginning because when people started to contemplate running for office for this year, your name was one of the very first that I heard. So you made the decision early on to run for Congress. What, Adam, was it about this year that made you say, this is my time? I absolutely have to do this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to come on your show. And so to answer that question, I got involved in the party, when I left from Oklahoma State. I put law school on hold. And as I was getting involved in that time in 2020, the George Floyd stuff was going on, and it was just a lot going on. Pandemic. I mean, it was a lot. And so the person that we expected to see, we didn't see in Kevin Hern, and so we had to do something, and we got to have a leader that wants to do the work and do the job effectively to work for the people. And so that's why I decided to run. That's why I decided to get in this race, because the people were looking for someone to hear them and to work on their behalf. And so I asked all the questions, right? I understood that this was a big seat to jump into, your first race. And so, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And so understanding that and knowing the seat and knowing the person that I'm going up against was important. So I did my research and studied and understood what I was going against. And I said, you know what? I believe it's time, and I believe we can do it. And if I don't do it, who will? Right. And so I thought I was qualified. I feel like I could do the job effectively and make sure that I'm doing the work of the people.
You've said the work of the people a couple of times, and that has been a consistent message throughout your campaign. And so clearly you've talked to a lot of Oklahomans in CD1, and you understand what their concerns are. Yeah. And consistently throughout the state, one of the biggest concerns that we hear is education. Yes. And you just heard about the Secretary of Education and the lies that he's telling, and the push for privatization. Would you talk a little bit, please, about your position on schools?
Yes. So I'm a public school graduate, right? So I'm a product of public school education. And so I take great pride in that. And so education is the top of my agenda, one of them. There's so many things that I want to fight for, but that's one of them because it shows that there's good people produced out of that out of the education system, such as public schools. And so when you see people like Ryan Walters and all the things that he's been pushing for however long he's been out there doing it. And it's a tragedy to Oklahomans. It's a tragedy to our teachers. It's a tragedy to the students, right? Because this is not who we are, right? And in this disinformation that's going on around the country, they're just pandering into that problem. And they're affecting our students at the end of the day because they're bringing that divisive spirit into our public schools. And it's not building anything, but it's tearing down. And so that's why I want to make sure that I'm putting a voice toward education and making sure that we are funding education effectively and not being like a Kevin Stitt and talking about, well, I want to pay our teachers $100,000 a year, but our teachers are still struggling in many cases to make ends meet, right? They're taking their own money to fund their classroom. And you're just pushing this propaganda that vote for me, then I'll do this. It's sad. Because we know that that's not what they're wanting to do. Their agenda is not to build our students in our education. Their agenda is to tear down and to say that critical race theory and all these things that they push on the Democrats.
More lies, by the way. Those are just more lies.
Yes, more lies that it's not. It's not even us. It's not. We want to see education thrive. We want to make sure that these students are graduating at the top of their class and going on to college and to get a great degree in whatever profession they want, whether that's going to college, whether that's getting a trade, whether that's starting a business. We want to make sure that we are putting our students in the right position to succeed for the future. And so that's why I'm in this race. And that's why I'm glad you asked that question on education, because that is a big question I hear in my district. When I'm going around there like, Adam, I'm a Republican and I don't agree with all this stuff that's going on because it's not building anything, but it's more or less tearing us apart.
Adam, I was nearly 50 years old, and I grew up in Oklahoma, went to OU, but I was nearly 50 years old before I heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Yes.
And for what they're doing now with whitewashing history, I don't see how our students can possibly be competitive. And I'm not talking about just at the college level. I'm talking about the reasoning skills necessary for many trades. They're just not being encouraged. So I'm truly grateful that this is something that you're focused on and concerned about.
Yeah.
Tell me what else people in CD1 are concerned about. They're telling you, Adam, this is really a big deal for me. What are those things?
It's safety, making sure that every day, more than 110 Americans are killed with guns, right? And, we should have the right to feel safe, and so that's one of the things that, that has been talked about, even healthcare, right? Quality to healthcare. So there's a lot of things, but safety was one of them that they talk about. They are for, saving our children, right? But the thing is, when it comes to our children being gunned down in the classroom, and excuse my analogy of how I'm putting that, but that's what it is. When they're being gunned down, you have no response to that is effective for the change we need and for our children and to save them, right? And so that a lot of parents are having to have those conversations with their children. Like, hey, if someone comes in the room and you stay quiet. I know we've all seen the video of the mother in Texas, right? That the TikTok video that's going viral around, and she was, just showing her son, her child, a baby, what to do if an intruder comes in the classroom, and if they say, is anyone in here, to be quiet, don't say a word. This is where we are in our society. And as a history guy, I got a history degree from Oklahoma State. I understand that if we don't address this right now, all this stuff, when we talk about safety, we talk about healthcare and education, we are going to look back at this and say, why didn't we do more? And so that's why I got involved. That's why I am involved. I put off law school for this because I didn't want anyone to put me in that category of saying, oh, he's just another attorney trying to look for a come up. No, I'm in this because I want to see lives change. And I come from nothing. I lived out of my car, in college for a short stint. And that's not a sob story, but that's the reality, right? Because I wanted to make sure that I left no doubt that I gave everything I had. And I'm a product of showing people that the American dream is still alive. and we can do this thing effectively. So when you asked the question of what is something else that my constituents have shared with me, was safety, because they want to make sure that when they go to church that they're protected. They want to make sure that when they go to the grocery store, they're protected. And I want to make sure as their congressman that I protect them at all costs, Republican and Democrat alike, because we all have to work together to make it through this society for the long term.
We certainly do. And, I'm particularly concerned that our congressional delegation this year has voted against reasonable gun laws. They voted against capping insulin prices. They voted against our seniors. They voted against road safety. They voted against the interests of Oklahomans at every turn. And there's no excuse for that. They are not representing Oklahoma. What's one of the very first things that you would like, that you will change? I'm going to rephrase that you will change when you get to Washington.
Yes. Well, I want to change to make sure that I will vote for the issues that build up our community, right? Because too many times we've had congressmen such as Kevin Hern, and I don't even want to mention his name, but we have to, right? And the thing is, he is up there. He's more or less just putting his money into the stock market, making money, and leaving the people with this notion that he works for them, and he's not. It seems as if he's doing the opposite. He's up there to lining his pockets to get rich. And I want to make sure that I'm putting that trust back into my district, that I want to work. I want to make sure that I'm voting on bills when it comes to infrastructure, to make sure that our roads and bridges in Oklahoma are safe for all our children and our families that travel up and down these roads. I want to make sure that we're producing visitors to come to Oklahoma on a safe travel when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about making sure that healthcare is accessible, right? I want to make sure that I'm voting to make sure that people can make ends meet without having to dig in their pockets to pay for their insulin, right? These are basic things. But when you talk about Republicans saying that they care about our veterans and they vote against our veterans that were in the product of the burn pits, and you tell me that you care about our veterans but you vote against that, I'm sorry. I think that's a double standard, and it's not true, because we have to work for our veterans. We have to protect our veterans. And so my agenda is to make sure that I'm working for people and being common sense and making sure that the people are at the top of that agenda and putting myself aside. That's why I've said I will not, and I'll say it again, I've said it publicly, that I will not be investing in any stocks because I don't want any of my constituents thinking that, I'm just making money and not listening to their everyday needs.
And that's a refreshing thing to hear, Adam, because so often, and this is particularly true among Republicans, but so often people get to Washington and they forget who sent them there. They forget the people that are still in Oklahoma, still struggling, still trying to make for a decent life for themselves and their family. And there is a total disconnect. Yeah. But you've been out there talking to the people in City 1, and it sounds to me like you're getting good feedback from both Republicans and Democrats.
Yes. And you know what? I like I said, that Republican and Democrats, but I came out really early. And the reason I decided to come out so early, another thing was I knew people didn't know who I was. So I wanted people to have to get a feel for me. And I also wanted to get a feel for myself of if I could do the job effectively. Because if I didn't feel like I could do it, I wouldn't have jumped into it. And so I wanted to really let people know who I am and what I'm all about. And so jumping out early was a part of that. But like you said, I'd spoken to so many people in my district, and a majority people wouldn't understand this, but I think people need to know this. A lot of the people that are supporting me that I've, that have coming out in a lot of different realms is Republican. And I'm not saying my Democrat people aren't, you know what I mean? But it would shock you to hear some of the conversations that I had. They're like, well, I'm a Republican. I'm going to support you because you actually want to do the job and you actually want to work for me. And so that's the leadership that I bring to the table, that I want to work for all of my constituents. And I want to make sure that we're building that bridge to walk across it together and to show that unity that we need, because, my constituents are ready for change. My constituents are tired of the same old, same old. They're tired of this man that doesn't even show up when it's time. And he never does show up, only when it's election time. And even now he still hasn't showed up, because he feels that the Republican Party's gerrymandered the lines in the districts. And I'm sure that's something, another conversation, but they don't have to show up. But here we are. I've been doing the work, and I'm going to continue to do the work because that's what it takes.
You really have, Adam. And like I said, yours was one of the first names I heard. But more importantly, you have stayed out there in front of the people, talking to the people, getting to know them. And obviously, they're getting to know you, too. You told us a little bit about your time when you were in college, but I'd like for you to elaborate a little more on your growing up years, if you would.
Of course. So I grew up in Wagner, Oklahoma. And so growing up in Wagner, raised by a single mother, my grandmother as well, and my grandfather, I come from a tight-knit family. And excuse me if I get a little emotional. I'm not going to cry, but, I lost my grandmother in April. And she was the matriarch of our family, and that was like literally my best friend. I talked to her every day in college, right? And so I was raised by strong women. I was raised by women that, they may not, my mom didn't have a college degree, but my grandmother did, actually. She went to NSU. And, I was raised by women that told me I could do anything I put my mind to. And so growing up in a town like Wagner, I played sports. I played quarterback. I ran track. And, growing up in Wagner, it's a football town, just like every small town, around Oklahoma. And we won the first state championship in 2011. And I think it was 12 or 11. But anyway, excuse me if I got that wrong. But anyways, we won our first state championship. And that was one of those moments where people don't know this, but if you're really close to me, I went to the Capitol. We went to the state capitol here in Oklahoma. And I remember people were excited to be there, but I would beg the question, obviously, where I'm at now. I actually took an honor to be there because I would have never been there otherwise, because I didn't know anyone that was in politics or in government. And just to be there I looked around. I remember looking, the little dome part in the middle where you can look down and look up, and it's really beautiful. And I told myself that I would be there one day. I told myself that I was going to work for people because I understood that entity, that body of work could change lives. And so being raised by women and raised in Wagner, Oklahoma is very humbling. So that's whenever and it's a whole nother thing, but when you talk about Roe v. Wade, that is something important to me because I was raised by women that were powerful, and they know who they are. They know their bodies, and they know the strength that they behold. And so that's who I am in a nutshell. I have an older brother. He's in the car business, and he's doing very well for himself. I have a nephew as well. And, my family, we're still working every day to be great people to the country that we so love so much, because that's what it takes, And so that's a little bit about me. I left Wagner, went to Oklahoma State. I got a history degree. And during that short time, like I shared earlier, I lived out of my car. And so, like I said, I don't use that as a sob story, but that was my story because I really wanted to get an education. I knew that my way out was going to be getting a degree to go to law school. And so that's me.
I have a question for one of our viewers. Were you a sprinter?
Actually, fun fact, and I still run today, I was a long distance guy. So I ran long distance, and yeah, that was my race. And I did some shorter ones, but it was more of relays, 2-mile relay or something like that. But yeah, I was a long distance guy, believe it or not.
Well, and that's kind of prophetic, isn't it? Because you're in this for the long haul as well.
Exactly. I use all those analogies, all the time for people. I'm like, man, it's like everything the little moments, like football, quarterback, then you go on a track, and then back, all these things that were leadership positions in a unique way that really shaped me to be who I am and understand how to work with different people, how to do things effectively. And I know that some people are like, oh, you should have worked in government. You should have been working on this campaign and that campaign. And I have to tell you, I just didn't. I didn't have that opportunity. But I'll tell you, my heart was always there. I grew up around people that didn't have a whole lot. I grew up around people that myself that was going to the churches to get their presents sometimes. Obviously mom would buy us stuff, but, a lot of our presents would come to the churches that gave it, right? I understand what it's like to be on food stamps, right? Because I actually was around it. I lived it. And so when I talk about these things, they're not just things that I'm talking about. I actually lived it. Like when my mom, when we got our place, and this is a personal story, but we lived, when she moved back to Wagner from Tulsa, because I stayed with my grandmother for a short time, and we lived on the ground. We slept on the floor at her apartment. But I loved her so much that I was willing to do that because, that she meant that much to me, right? But my mom showed me something. The reason bringing this up is her grit. It was as if we didn't live on. We weren't sleeping on the ground with, making a pallet on the ground, because in like a month or 2 months we had full furniture in the house because that woman just don't stop. She figures things out. And so those are the women that I was raised around. And so that's the community I come from, that is loving, giving, and they want to see people thrive. And so when people say I haven't been a part of this, a part of that, I beg to argue that I have. I've been a part of it since day one, since I was born.
And I am just so grateful that you are. I feel like you and I are just sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, because you're talking about your own experiences, and a lot of people can relate to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And the issues that are important to you are the issues that are important to me and to other Oklahomans.
Yeah.
So it's been so good getting to know you a little better tonight, and I know that our viewers will appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
In just wrapping things up this evening, Adam, what is the message that you would like to leave voters with?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things, and I want to say this. It doesn't matter how hard you go, you just don't quit. And I think I've presented that from day one. You don't quit. You don't give up on the people that you say you care about, because these people need someone and something to believe in. And if you can be a part of that in a little minute way, why not do the work, and why not do it effectively? And so something I would leave with the people, but besides saying that, is my slogan is a voice for the people. I want to make sure that people know that Adam Martin means business on day one, that I'm going to make sure that I fight to make sure that you're protected, your rights are protected, to make sure that you can put food on the table, to make sure that your family and your grandchildren and their children are building towards a future we can all believe in, because the American dream is still alive. No matter how bad these politics may want to shape the media, they may want to shape that we're so divided, we actually agree on the middle ground issues. It's just as if we just don't talk about it enough. And so I want to make sure that my campaign, we are working for people. It's not me trying to build a brand to go further and leave the people behind. It's build a brand and go further and bring the people with me, because that's what it's going to take. And that's what I want to do. I'm not here to play games. I'm here to do a job. And I'm making sure that every time I'm on the campaign trail that I speak with a understanding that we are on the same playing field. I just have a different title if once elected, and I won't change. I will make sure that I come back to this district and I will fight for you. So everyone that's listening to this message, I want you to understand, don't lose hope. You may not win the first time. You may not win, later on, but you just keep fighting until you do. Because if you keep sending people and you keep promoting and keep fighting with them, things change. And I'm a product of knowing that if you keep fighting, you keep working, things will change. And right now in our environment, in our society, we need a fighter. We need a leader we can believe in. And so I want to make sure that I'm a part of that in history.
That's exciting. I want to invite our viewers to go to martinforcongress.com, where they can learn more about you, and at that time also make a contribution to your campaign. Because mounting a campaign for Congress is not inexpensive, and you're wearing out a lot of shoes in this process. So any help that our viewers can give you will be, I know, very much appreciated and put to use right away. Before I let you go, I just need to share this thought with you. Keto Sweeto, who's watching the show tonight, says, "Good luck to you, Adam. Small town Oklahoma really teaches great life lessons and sure does develop core values in the Oklahoma Standard. Great that the women in your life so influenced who you are today." I couldn't have said that better myself.
Thank you.
Adam Martin, running for Congressional District 1 in Oklahoma. Adam, we are going to be with you all the way through this campaign. You know we're behind you, and I am looking forward to the day come right after the first of the year to be able to call you Congressman Martin.
Thank you so much, and I can't wait to come back on your show, and we'll speak again.
We absolutely will. Thanks again, Adam. Have a good
Yes, sir.
evening.
God bless. Thank you.
Friends, before we go this evening, I just need to take a moment to say that our thoughts are with the Oklahoma County Sheriff who was shot today, and our thoughts are with the family of the Oklahoma County Sheriff who was killed today by a gunman. They took the gunman into custody as he was trying to enter Tinker Air Force Base not long after the shootings. But we mourn with you, and we stand with you, and you have our deepest sympathy. Friends, I'm delighted that you were with us this evening. I hope that you'll share Adam's message and let people know what he had to say and why you think he would be a great candidate. As a matter of fact, he is a great candidate, why you think he would be a great congressman. We'll be back next week with another candidate. But until then, please take good care of yourselves this week. Take good care of each other. From all of us here at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for watching us. Good night.